Oh, hey, it's Ariel Anderson, midlife pregnancy and fertility coach, and I'm here today to dive in with you and dive deep. Now, I will admit, I'm a little bit nervous, so just bear with me because there's that introverted side of me that has moments of just feeling so internal, and yet at the same time, I want to be so present for you. And this week's topic is pretty intense, or can be, which is pregnancy after loss. 40 plus and pregnancy after loss. I know that you might be joining in here and you might not be over 40, and there will definitely still be something here for you. I'm just focused in on that realm at the moment, and but this is valuable because I have never told my full stories before. I will tell pieces of them today just to get us into the spirit of where things are, as far as what I want to share with you, and to be able to answer questions. So I will just start. Now, I know that you may be seeing this on the replay, and if so, great. Still ask your questions down in the comments. I do answer them. And, I guess my question to you is, have you ever experienced loss? Maybe it was pregnancy loss, maybe another kind of loss, relationship. Perhaps it was, uh, there's so many different versions of loss and mourning. And society around the world deals with that differently, or I could say even doesn't deal with that in different ways. Some societies and cultures are so good at really taking a moment of pause and really settling into what's next and what's happening in the moment and the emotions and the whole ritual around it. And then there's societies, I know, being in Czech, that was very, in Czech Republic, loss and grieving, it was a silent thing. And even though I'm here in Northern California, where a lot of people are talking about their process and diving into things, there's still something about that silent loss. And I actually even wrote a book, a small book on this, which I, me, I'm a closet artist, so it hasn't come out. Maybe that's something, now that I'm thinking about it, I can share in the future, some pieces of that may or may not be helpful. I don't know. Uh, but this silent loss is it's very strong, partly because one, we're not talking about it that much. Maybe you're lucky. Maybe you have a circle around you, your family, your friends, where you're talking about everything. I talk about a lot of things with my friends, but it wasn't until I had a loss that I started to ask around. In fact, it wasn't the first loss. It was maybe the second, third, or fourth loss, or maybe even the fifth loss, where in fact that's where my epiphany happened, was the last loss. And that's when I started asking more questions. And I realized how many women in my circle had had miscarriages, not to mention their lives with siblings and whatnot. And I thought, what story is here? What is really happening? Maybe before I dive into this too much, I want to say two until just before I came on, loss. Oh gosh, I'm going to forget the last. Sorry. But if you go on Ariel Green Anderson onto my Instagram, you can see that I'm connected to them there. They just put up something today saying that October is Pregnancy, Infant, and Loss Awareness Month. I didn't know that. And I thought, this is very serendipitous. This is important. So I just want to acknowledge that this is an important month for acknowledging these losses. And why I'm talking about this isn't just to dive in and let's talk about loss and pain and, oh, I don't want to talk about that stuff. Well, what I realized on my fifth loss was that it is important, that we can't go around things, but we have to go through them. The emotions, the messages, the lessons, and the truth of it. So, okay, this is where the nerves come in. My first loss, I remember vividly. And I wanted to just acknowledge that after 5 losses, uh, and I don't know how many you may have had, or if your loss that you've had in the past was about something else, but we're talking right now about pregnancy losses, then I would say it's like this. You see this? Here we go. This is my fingerprint. Each one has its own fingerprint. Every loss isn't the same, just like every person grieving isn't going to be doing it in the same way. The way you mourn or have your loss, the act of the loss, the emotions, the thoughts, excuse me, will be absolutely different to mine. And even when we talk about it and we find those common lines, there will be a difference. Do you know what I'm talking about? Maybe I could equate it to love. If you've been in love more than once, or you've crushed more than once, or you look back at your relationships and the way that the breakups or the ending happened in the past. And if you hadn't had many relationships, because, midlife, I've had a few since I met my husband much later, my partner. Maybe it's the breakup of friendships. Just think about the different imprints, the different fingerprints of each of those. So I mentioned that because I'm going to talk about a couple of my losses. The first one, the conception was, let's say there was an opening for it. It wasn't a full intention, but it was a yes, a yes. We already knew very early on. My husband said, yes, we're going to be creating together. I've always known I was going to have a daughter. I just started to wonder at a certain point. I was so sure, but then, the messages were something else. And so, we had this incredible, passionate, like, we're making a baby, that beginning, that amazing beginning before any loss comes. I remember because things broke. It was just very passionate and beautiful. And we knew we were making a baby. Whew. Okay. Just going to take a moment. The emotions are coming, and that's okay. That's part of it. And we were in another country, and feel, I can hear actually, and feel vividly the experience of being in this very far away country, and walking through temples, and then knowing that the loss was happening. It was early, but it was still very palpable. You feel that difference that comes in your body. That there's that flush of difference, the glow that they say, but it comes from the inside out. You just know. And I remember, and this is going to be a little vivid for you, but I remember realizing that here we are in the middle of nowhere, and I have to manage this situation I didn't expect. Manage. See, I'm already using the words. Who? And so I had to go and find the place where I could deal with the bleeding, which was what was basically a hole in the ground in a dark place without lights. In I'm trying to remember. It was, I want to say, cement or wood, something. I just remember darkness with little cracks of light, which felt to me so poignant. And I just remember this heaviness in my heart. There wasn't a lot of pain. It was just a heaviness in my heart. And even now I can kind of feel this like tension and opening. And my body, as I was trying to figure out what to do. And I remember the sounds of prayers on the outside, of people and the crowds of people walking around. And I remember the tears. I remember the tears streaming down my face and thinking, but I did everything right. And I thought, in this place, this sacred place of all places, where they were symbols of men and women, it was like fertility, and it was kind of not serendipitous, the opposite of what that would be, just strong moment, that here would be the place I wouldn't lose, but there it was, the first loss, and yet, while there was a heaviness and a sadness to the loss, there was still an echo of the pregnancy that was sort of a euphoric, uh, still highly sensitized. I remember the passion of the evening was still strong, and so strong that it sent out a vibration, so to speak. There was a heightened sense of passion, which seemed to me, I almost felt guilt around. In fact, I remember thinking, this is impossible. How can I have a loss and have such passion and heightened feeling in it at the same time? Um, this is very personal, but I'm sharing it. Um, and I mention this because there's so many ideas of how loss is supposed to be. Now, flash forward to my fifth loss. And this one was much further along. And the fingerprint of this one was incredible pain, physical pain. And previous ones before that had been big heart pain. This one was physical pain and definitely mental because, it goes on for a while when it's later. And so you get a lot of time to think about it. And by that point, you've been after the first loss, you're checking every time you go to the bathroom at a certain, during that period, like, here we go. Is it happening again? And by the last one, it was really strong because we were so much further along. And I was so sure that once we were pregnant, that I would be 100% sure. And I wasn't. I had had my life for a long time, and I shocked myself, and I was so ashamed that I realized that I was inside that pregnancy starting to think about all the things I wouldn't get to do that year. Strange, right? It's just a year. But in that moment, it was, I wouldn't get to snowboard, and, I couldn't do this, and I couldn't cycle, and I had all these couldn'ts that were flashing up. It was that contraction during the pregnancy of literally of scarcity and worry and what if it's uncomfortable, all these things, even though you're happy to be there, don't get me wrong. So I realized that doubt, or the things that hadn't been resolved, the emotions that hadn't been resolved before that last loss, were what caused the loss. Before, I could blame it on other things. There were stressors and outside talk, but this was clear that it was inside me. And that's when I had the aha, as I was in the hospital, realizing I didn't want to be in the hospital, realizing that every pill that they gave me, I was not going to take, because I knew I needed to experience the fullness of the pain and the emotion. And I'm sharing this with you because I think so often we get overwhelmed, or you have to be in your life, your daily life, or in your relationship. Maybe your relationship demands a lot. Maybe you already have kids, or you have bonus kids, or you have your work, which was another aha, but that's a whole other conversation. But your work path is important as well. And it's finding the way that these can weave together that makes sense for who you are. Today we'll focus on just the different fingerprints and the aha. So the aha was really that I had to fully choose it, even though I thought I had chosen it. There was a deep cleansing, literally cleansing. My body was releasing, and there was a cleansing of an idea of what pregnancy and loss were. And I know that was the same daughter that I have now. I recognize the energy, the challenge. And I remember that I felt clean. Like now, everything, those other 5 losses were all part of the story, and this last one was the one that woke me up. And what it woke me up to was that I had to do some really deep work on acceptance of receiving, of having a space, which we've talked about before, having clearing a space, and listening, deeply listening to, what's next each day, each week, in a very clear way. And even when you've done the work and you've been doing consciousness, mindfulness, meditation work, you've been eating well, there's all the right things, there's always a last thing, that thing that's sitting right there in front of you, that's asking for your attention, and you see it and you're like, "Ah, okay, maybe later," or you don't see it and it's going to keep getting in the way. So I can't answer that exactly for you, certainly not in a live today. uh, However, I just wanted to be present with you in the fact that each loss, as cliche and incredibly irritating as it is to hear, does have a message, does have a lesson and a gift. But more importantly, recognize and allow yourself the permission that each one will feel differently and might not fall into those shoulds box that I dislike so much, that S word, of how you're supposed to feel, the grieving, the this and that. That piece may be in there, but each one's gonna taste different because they are. You are different at each point in time, and whatever spirit or energy, whatever it's about, each one is different, in that moment in time. So I just want to throw that out there because this is Pregnancy, Infant, and Child Loss Awareness Month. I decided to go even deeper, to share. I didn't expect to share tears, but I did, and that's okay. And I encourage you to go into your own story, into the pieces that would like your attention. Sit with them, sit with a cup of something. I've got my vitamin C for stress and health, and give yourself space for those emotions or that feeling. If your loss is that you haven't even had a loss yet, your loss is that it's your loss is time or a partnership, because you have this focus and that's the thing. The losses, they pull apart pieces of you. Little pieces of your heart get scarred. And yet at the same time, they expand you. And I'm just in the feeling, so talking is getting a little bit more challenging, but it's all to grow you to be able to have more space and receptivity for your pregnancy. And so if your loss is that you haven't even been pregnant yet, and then there's that pain, that grieving of not being pregnant, not having your child, please acknowledge that. And I love journaling. You might not be a journaling person, maybe you're an art person, or maybe it comes through in another way, but I really encourage you today to put those emotions or put that story into play in some way that you can see, hear, taste. Maybe it's into a recipe. If you believe in the like water for chocolate, maybe it's that story that goes into the food that allows you to feel. Maybe you share that with your partner or somebody who you matters to you, or you deepen it with yourself according to what your journey is and who you're doing it with. So that's my story. And now we're moving into the 20th minute. And are there any questions, or is there anything that you want to share? You put a one in the chat if you yourself have experienced loss. And, if you're a dad here as well, I want to encourage you to recognize your own journey inside of that. We get very focused on ourselves, right? But, you also have had deep loss in a different way. It's still part, and then you manage it differently. And I know that that's important to acknowledge as well. Any questions? You're welcome to throw down in the comment any comments down in the comments now or on the replay. Um, I just want to encourage you to, look at it, experience it, taste it, feel it. You don't have to do it with me, but and make space for that story, that piece. And next time we're going to, since it's still Awareness Month, I decided to switch things up, and I will. Let's talk a little bit about ritual around loss and how we can support each other in that. I think that's what we're going to talk about. I'll put a link in for the next one at the end of this, and it'll be in the description. You can click on that, get a reminder, and be here next time. And what else can I say? If you haven't subscribed yet, definitely hit subscribe, and let's see. Hi, Michelle. I'm 46. Okay. Michelle K. I'm 46 and have had 3 losses with my husband. Haven't conceived years now. Makes me cry. Reading that just felt like a chill up and down my body. Yeah. Uh, not conceiving or not having the birth at the end of a pregnancy, it's incredibly painful. And thank you for sharing that with us, because anything over one is really strong. And I imagine that you and your husband, it makes it harder to be excited when you do get pregnant. It's harder to connect in with uh, being hopeful and believing in the next one. And, I have that video, Believe to Conceive. And I do still believe that if you are in that place where you can really get yourself into a space of belief, and yet I understand that after 3 losses, or 1 loss, or 5 losses, or more, it touches your heart, or whatever version of your grieving. Um, I lost my train of thought because I started feeling. That's what I do. Uh, it's hard. It's difficult sometimes. It's something to work with. I try to watch my words. I don't want to say it's difficult, because then it makes it difficult. But when you can no longer grab onto that faith or that belief. I know faith is interconnected with Christianity, and you may or may not believe in something. Let's just say faith in yourself. There's hard to hold on to that faith or that belief, because now it feels further away. And if I had you sitting in front of me right now, I would have you, if you're not driving, close your eyes for a moment and put your hand on your heart. I'll stand up for a second. And your hand on your belly, and close your eyes for a moment and take a breath with me. And exhale. And I just want to say to you that you are not broken. You guys are doing the right thing. That your body knows what to do. This journey, if you are continuing to be clear that you are meant to be a mother, you are meant to be a family together, then keep going. And notice where the tensions are. Notice what comes up, if there are doubts, if there are stories that are coming in to your space, and how you can clear that space for you. What is interrupting? What's truly interrupting these pregnancies is one of those things that's right there. It's just either not the exact moment to find it, or it's a matter of clearing your vision. but trust that you will get the clarity of what's next and what's necessary. And just keep trusting in one another and that opening and that connection, which in a couple of weeks is what we're going to talk about, is the connection. You can open your eyes. Maybe you keep your hands there if it feels comfortable. Go into that feeling, or relax your arms back down into your lap. And I honor you and your tears and your body, and knowing that this isn't over, that the answer isn't so far outside of you as you might think, and that it's coming. When I close my eyes, I feel it's not quite yet, but it's not over. Yeah, Michelle, that's what I have to say. And if you're listening on a replay, then uh, I may be speaking to you. And I look forward to seeing you next week, next Friday at 10 o'clock Pacific. I'll be here every Friday. And in November, I'm going to help you to clear some space. I have a free event coming up at the beginning of November, and I want to spend some time with you. And I want to give you as much as I can to help you to clear the space that I was talking with Michelle about. And I talked about is what I learned at the beginning or the end of my last loss. But it really comes into just start now, between now and that time. Just keep listening to what's coming up. And if you're really over busy right now, or if there's a lot happening in your life, please write it down. Write down have a little notebook if you don't like using your phone, or put it into a Google Doc. I talk about this a lot, but write it down. Little things that come up that don't even make sense, but just write them down and keep writing them down. And there, your answer is going to come, and how to proceed. Excuse me, how to proceed. And I'm here to, in whatever way I can, to move you forward. And yeah, that's it. So thank you again, Michelle, for your story and honoring us with your tears and your presence. And to you out there, oh, thank you. I really need it. Thank you. Making space for loss and emotions. It's not always the way in which society is set up. Yeah, come share this space and feel. But this space is one of those spaces, and that's what I'm doing my best to create for you live. Because my videos is just me talking. I want to be here in whatever way I can, and I'm gonna open that up differently as we go forward, because I feel like uh, your baby is meant to come, and I want to make sure you get that because you deserve it. Keep going. Right. I'll see you next time, and thank you so much. Have a beautifully feeling day, and remember, you're meant for this.